Alright, YouTube, here is a report on a train wreck style trip that I took on legal weed, aka spice, some time ago. Wasn't fun at all. I know that in previous times I had formerly recognized spice as a legitimate substitute for marijuana, but indeed that is, in fact, not the case. I smoked so much spice. I was smoking actually the pure JWH powder, the actual research chemical, the purified granular substance in a pipe. I probably smoked more spice in one sitting than any other human being on Earth has ever done. Probably a higher dose than any other human being has ever achieved. And it was terrible. I know people have reported for some time now, it doesn't matter whether it's JWH-018, which is the primary chemical used in most spice, or any of the analogs. Some of the analogs are weaker, and some of them have a slightly different chemical system, but they're all essentially the same family of full agonists of the THC receptor. Whereas marijuana, the THC is a partial agonist. It's a lot less powerful and a lot more pleasant, actually, when you really think about it. I would not recommend anyone use spice. I'm officially coming out and saying, do not use this substance. It's not a good idea. For one thing, I had always used herbal substances before. I had always used natural entheogens, and I never really had any problems with them. I would have occasional bad parts to my trip, but these would pass, and the trip overall would be intensely pleasurable. But with spice, that's not the case. I started using the JWH, and I felt like I was in a daze for weeks. It really just wasn't pleasant. You could tell by the way you felt that it wasn't healthy. It was sort of more addictive too than marijuana, certainly. You started to miss the substance as you withdrew from it, and the withdrawal included some depression. So I would say this substance is probably significantly more addictive than marijuana, certainly, and probably more addictive than most of the substances I've used. But let me go through the details of the actual bad trip, because I think it would be beneficial if people knew just how dangerous this substance could be. And this isn't just an isolated case. I know somebody personally who took one hit and had seizures and dissociation. It depends on the person. It depends on their use of other drugs. It depends on their biochemistry, their own biological makeup. It depends on probably their size and their weight. But this substance isn't healthy at all, and really nobody should be using it. It's a sad testament to the American system of drug enforcement that marijuana is not legal, and that people have to use stuff like this, just like that ivory mist bullshit that people are snorting now. What's the point? It's not safe, it's not effective, it's worthless. And this chemical, unfortunately, the ban has been, I'm not sure exactly what they did, but the ban has been, they're holding on to it and not banning it completely yet, so JWH is now back on the market, which I think is bullshit. But basically what happened is I smoked a lot of it, and I went into the shower because I wanted to take a shower, and in the shower I just completely dissociated from reality. I started having seizures and convulsions, and in my mind I honestly thought I had died. I really thought I was dead, and so that freaked me out quite a bit. All I can remember is all of existence compressed into one molecule, and it seemed like I had stopped existing and gone into some nether region of the universe where things just didn't make any sense. I could hear nothing but screaming, and it was insane. It was literally like being insane. I couldn't see anything, although I might have had my eyes closed, and when I did have them open, everything was moving so quickly I couldn't tell what the hell was going on. I remember when I woke up, my dad was there. He's like, "What the hell did you take?" Because apparently I had made so much noise in the shower, thrashing around and screaming, that he finally came in. I had the frame of mind to keep the door unlocked, and I turned the water off, thankfully, before I actually went completely out of my mind. So I didn't drown, and I didn't, have burns all over my body from the hot water. So I just remember, it was insane, and I ended up going to the hospital and spending quite a while in a psych ward because my brain just couldn't handle it. It wasn't pleasant. And I continued to have moderate hallucinations on the order of, I couldn't tell, like, the length of time. I felt really depressed and just completely out of it for about 3 days. But keep in mind, this would be on a very, very high dosage of JWH. A lower dose would just send someone to the hospital. They'd probably be fine after that. But people have suffered from brain hemorrhages. It ups your blood pressure. It ups your heart rate. People have had hemorrhages. People have gone blind. The fact that I'm not blind or brain dead at this point is actually kind of amazing because of the dose that I took. But it really... And also, I don't feel normal even now. I'm getting back to normal, but I don't feel the same as I did before my trip. It really changed the way that I look at things because I came so close to death, and not in a pleasant way. I really wouldn't recommend anybody use this substance because what it amounts to is a poison. That's basically what it is. And anyone who's putting this in their body, I would recommend that you stop and just go to weed. You can find it if you're willing to look for it, and it's a hell of a lot safer. Even laced weed would probably be safer than using this shit. But everyone I've spoken with who has used it on a regular basis has had the same problem of, over time, not only is there an addiction potential that builds up, but at the same time, you sort of dissociate from things, and you sort of view yourself more as not an active participant in life, but an observer of your life. And I've had that for the last few months, and it's only starting to go away now, months and months later. That was back in November. Last November is when I had the bad trip, and I felt like shit for 2 months before I started finally feeling more normal. Now, thankfully, I'm back to a point where I can enjoy life, and it's not completely screwed up. But for months and months, I had bouts of depression, bordering on suicidal. I felt like absolute crap 24/7. The only thing that really made it go away was when I fell asleep. So if you want to ruin your life for months and months, or potentially go blind or hemorrhage and die, you should keep using this substance. Otherwise, you probably shouldn't. Now, I'm not sure why it hasn't been banned, because even though it's being marketed as incense, they've banned salvia in a lot of places, and salvia doesn't do nearly the same shit that JWH does. Although, interestingly enough, the aspect of visual change and the aspect of psychological change was similar to salvia, only a hell of a lot more powerful. This would be like a long-term, extraordinarily high dosage of salvia. It is not the sort of thing people should be taking. And I learned that lesson the hard way. Now, I don't use entheogens anymore because I'm afraid that if I use anything, it's going to push me over the edge again. You can see my problem. I want to be spiritually connected to entheogens, and I can no longer really do that because of that one extraordinarily bad trip. And it could be years and years before I feel completely normal again. If I ever even do feel completely normal again. I still don't feel normal now. So, just please trust me on this one. The people who are connected with me on YouTube know I've got a lot of experience with entheogens. I've done a lot of entheogens, and most of the time, even though I can't directly recommend them because it's illegal, I've said, for me, they were enjoyable. For me, they were enlightening. This substance is neither. It's not fun like weed. The trip, also, if you haven't tried it, the trip, it's similar in a visual way to weed. It'll give you the same kaleidoscopic patterns. It'll give you a sort of euphoria, but it's a sick euphoria. It's almost like being poisoned. It's not the same as marijuana where you just feel relaxed and good. It's more of you're being forced to laugh, you're being forced to be euphoric against your will, and it's really unpleasant. And even though it's a substitute for weed, in the short term, if you really have no other choice, if you've gotten to that point where you're willing to put this in your body instead, you shouldn't be using weed either, because you're obviously completely fucking addicted to it. People shouldn't be using entheogens out of a need to do them. They should be using them out of a desire to do them, and that's always what I've stressed before. And it was wrong of me to use the substance in the first place. I should have known better, for one thing. I should have looked into it more, into the negative aspects of it more. But really, they call it legal weed. It's nothing like weed other than superficially. And it shouldn't even be legal, and I'm hoping that the ban is allowed to continue. I'm not sure exactly why they withheld the ban. My thought is that the government wants people to use this substance. I think they want people who are connected with entheogen usage to fuck up their minds and not be able to use it anymore. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it is being pushed tailor-made for that purpose, to knock out the segment of the culture that deals with entheogens, but aren't strictly herbalists. Because the government, trust me on this one, even though the government has a stick up its ass about entheogens, they really don't care about some happy hippie out in the woods growing mescaline. They really don't, because those people aren't going to convince anyone else to use it because they shun the internet and things like that too, or at least that's the stereotype the government endorses of these people as being rather insulated from the rest of society. But people who are willing to try something like spice are a different order of magnitude on the herbalist scale, and I think they want the more technologically connected entheogen users who have insight to offer, people like myself. I think they want us knocked out of society, or at least knocked out of the entheogenic culture. And I think they're allowing JWH and Ivory Mist and all these other supposedly substitutes for various entheogens to continue because they want people to get fucked over. But ultimately, definitely not recommended to use legal weed, aka spice, or whatever else you want to call it. None of the brands are safe. They have some that are, oh, well, we don't use JWH, we use other chemicals. Well, they're all the same class. It might not be JWH, it might be, I think it's RCB or something like that. It's the same agonist. And nobody should be using that stuff. Just use marijuana. Depending on what state you're in, it might not even really be illegal to do that. And it's not going to fuck you up. It's just going to make you feel good. Unlike spice, which will make you feel miserable for potentially months and months if you overdose. And it happens more often, I think, than they're willing to let on. I think that it is vastly underreported. I think a lot of people certainly have died using this substance. Again, if you're willing to go to those lengths to get high, you probably shouldn't be getting high in the first place. You really should put it down and re-examine your life. Whereas somebody who's just dropping acid occasionally isn't going to fuck themselves up, most likely, because they're using a substance which, for all intents and purposes, is safe for human consumption, certainly compared to the research chemicals that, for some reason, aren't illegal yet. And it's sold with the obvious intent that it's going to be consumed by humans. It is obvious that the manufacturers of this so-called incense mean for it to be consumed in a manner of being... The fact that it can be consumed without making you vomit up your guts shows that. Although I vomited up my guts when I was overdosing. But really, when you think about it, it's obviously for human consumption. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be allowed to be marketed. It's not an incense product. Everybody knows it's not an incense product, and nobody uses it as an incense product. If more than 50% of the people using a product are using it in a manner inconsistent with the actual purpose stated on the package, it shouldn't be sold. And really, research chemicals that are entheogenically active shouldn't be on the market for the mass public to consume in the first place, nor should they be additives in any commercial product. There are plenty of herbal things that people can use to awaken themselves spiritually without turning to chemicals, and I think it's ridiculous that people would. So I got sort of knocked out of the entheogenic culture by it, and unless you want that to happen to you, you probably should stay away from this substance. It's really not safe, And I see one thing that disturbs me is various people who are associated with manufacturing spice are constantly pushing their products on my videos about it. Don't do that anymore. Really don't want you to do that. I'm going to delete your comments and I'm going to call you an asshole for making a product that you know is potentially going to make people sick. You won't see many of those people smoking their own products. That's the key there. It's like looking at the tobacco executives and saying, do they smoke their own cigarettes? Probably not. Um, you know, that's how you can tell that it's not a product you should really be buying. So don't use legal weed. Really not a good idea. You could have a train wreck trip like you wouldn't believe and think you turned into water, which is what I thought had happened to me. I guess the water going over my body in the shower sort of made me think I had turned into it. So